No, go on, go. My son, my dog seems to need some attention this morning. Hey, what do you want? You want to go outside? Go on. Go, come on, let's go. Go. Come on.
Mine heard the conversation about doggos and needed to come join the meeting too.
Hey, sorry about that. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Do we have anybody new who's joining us today? I don't think so. All righty. Well, so good morning, everybody. Glad to see you all today. Um, gonna get just jump into the agenda here. Got some folks who may need to take off fairly soon today. So first of all, I always like to thank our sponsors, Care First Arizona, um, Karen Ziegler, Valley Telecom, Kajit, and Triad Wireless. We appreciate your support. And moving on to the agenda. Excuse me. So let's start with Aaron. Do you want to introduce yourself, Aaron, and give us a quick update? And Kelly, hopefully we can hear from you also.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just be real quick and give all the time to Kelly because I don't really have any updates. My name is Erin Larandos. I'm the Digital Equity Program Manager in the State Broadband Office, which is housed within the Arizona Commerce Authority. I get to guide the digital equity work here at the state level, which is exciting. But we are still in the process of waiting for final approval from our application for the just over $16 million in capacity funding, which we're anticipating from NTIA. This is the funding that will ultimately help us enact the digital equity plan. And so if folks haven't had a chance to look at that, that's available on our website. And I will give it to Kelly.
Okay. Good morning, Kelly, and drive safely.
Yes, I'm just waiting in line to get on the freeway, so it's perfect timing.
Oh, how fun.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thanks, Steve and Aaron. My name is Kelly Crucy. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for the State Broadband Office. Thanks, as always, for having us. I don't think I've got any new updates since last week. We did send out some email communications earlier this week. If you did not receive that, please put your email in the chat and I know to grab it and put it onto our contact list. But basically announcing that the our new website also and the date change for the application window. So round one of applications, as you all are probably aware, will now open on January 6th, and that is moved back from December 20th. So now it will open after the holidays, and we are moving with a date of publishing the final project areas and all of the application guidance by December 23rd. So I think those are the main updates from our office. We're right now just prepping for that application window, all of the guidance documents, arranging all of our webinars. We will have some webinars for feed applicants to help them understand the portal and answer any technical questions. And we will also be offering weekly office hours, a webinar for Q&A. Again, all technical information, nothing about procurement, but just about the application and the technical aspects of that. So that will be ongoing during the application window as well. And I think that's it for our updates, unless Aaron is going to let me know I'm missing anything. But I think that's it.
I really don't think you are, but just so you're aware, since you're driving, I put links in the chat to the new website, both the BEAD and DE pages, where you can see all that pre-registration and timeline information that Kelly went over too.
Oh, and yes, thank you for that. And we did do a quick little demo earlier this week for the new website. Just so you all know, when you go to that website, and you click on initiative, and if you go to BEAD or digital equity, there are tabs on the page. So there you can find the webinars, you can find the recordings of all of our webinars, and that demo will be put up on the webinar tab as well. So pay attention to those tabs on each of the initiative pages, and you'll find all the information you need there.
So Kelly, I think I sent out the notice about the new website, but is there a possibility? I don't know if you're going to be here next week. Maybe you could do a little demo about the new website.
I will actually not be here next Thursday, but I can send the video out. I can send you the link to the video, Steve.
Oh, that'd be good.
You can definitely share that with everyone.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, apologies for missing next week, but happy to share that video. It's like 20 minutes, and I can make a little guide as far as like what, is at what point in time. The B page is here, DE page here. So I'll try and make it very helpful so you don't have to watch all 19 minutes.
Sounds good. And
right.
And just FYI, a couple of things while we're talking about this is that, of course, next week will be our last week and our last meeting until January, right? Christmas, New Year's, and so forth. So we'll be looking at a number of things after the first of the year. But anyway, so Kelly, thank you so much for being here, and Aaron, for you to be here also. You've been pretty regularly here with us. We appreciate it.
I just thought of one other thing, actually, if I can, and thank you for
Sure.
that. Yes, this is the way I start my Thursdays, and I have for over 2 years. So thank you so much. So I just wanted to also mention that ACA has filled the tribal liaison position. I am not like introducing the person. We'll get them here, in their time, but I just wanted to let the group know that. So there's a contact, and EJ in his position has met our new tribal liaison, and we're making those connections, but it's, early days for that person in their role. So that's on the future conversations as well.
Sounds good. Thanks. And I also want to remind everybody about two things. One is you're all receiving my email and my newsletter, and I try to capture everything, all the announcements, and include all the links in my newsletter on a regular basis. And second, and of course, along with that I do send out the recording and chat and all that sort of stuff. But again, if you're interested in capturing anything that was talked about and included in the chat, that you can download the chat. If you go into the chat and you go to the top, you'll see 3 dots or 3 ellipses. And if you click on that, you can download the chat to your computer. So I just want to remind people about that, because sometimes it's hard to keep up with who spoke about what and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's that. I haven't checked yet. Nicole, are you online by chance? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, well, let's just get into our presentations this morning. Reed, you want to go first, or EJ, are you in a hurry? You're going to need to leave?
No, I got time.
Okay, so let's put Reed on first. Reed is the Community Broadband Specialist Research Associate at the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society, and really appreciate Reed being here, since he is actually in the UK with his special person, and so appreciate Reed being here. Among other things, Reed recently released a report talking about the election and Arizona. So with that, Reed, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you do your thing.
Sure. Thank you,
You,
Steve.
you need
And
to
thanks
do you
everyone.
need to share anything?
No, I'm good. I'll drop the link to the article in the chat right there, but other than that, I'm good.
Okay.
So thanks everyone. And I spoke probably about a month or well, more than a month ago now. Yeah, a month and a half ago, when I published the first article. Me and one other writing associate at the Benton Institute, Zoe Walker, looked at a few states in the lead up to the election, and looked at how candidates were talking about broadband, what their platforms were, up and down the ballot, whether in close races, or at least that's how I approached in Arizona, was looking at the close races that were on the ballot in the state. So that ended up being in the first article, Gallego Lake Senate race, and then House races in the first, fifth, and sixth, I believe. In the just the first and sixth, excuse me. And as a result of that first call, that I was able to come on and speak, someone in the chat, I don't remember who, but I'm thankful, pointing out that the second district, I think during the time of my writing that first article, a poll came out showing that it was a pretty close race, between the incumbent Eli Crane and Jonathan Nez. And that ended up going for Crane, but much closer than I think originally it was thought to be. Thought to be a much stronger district for Republicans than it ended up being. But I included that race in the follow-up article. So this second article, which I posted in the chat, is much of a lot of the same information, but a lot of new information as well, post-election, kind of some of the outcomes, and it just goes with Benton's overall post-election coverage about what um, election results from the federal, state, and local level um, are going to look like for implementation of some of the larger broadband programs. So I won't make any broad sweeping predictions about how any of the programs are going to be carried out, how they're going to be affected, if they're going to be affected by the incoming administration and the incoming Congress. But it's worthwhile to note what candidates said in the run-up to their election, any voting history that they had in their time in Congress or in a state house. So I think it's valuable coverage.
Reed, just FYI, and I
Yes,
think I probably told you this, that I've been basically, when we've been talking about doing these updates, that I basically said, what do we know? What do we think we know? And what don't
right.
we know? And obviously it's going to be changing from day to day in the next few months. I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
exactly. And no, and that's a good point. I mean, it's a lot of we're learning what we don't know as we go. And yeah, just say that to say I'm not smart enough to make any broad predictions or about what is going to happen. But in terms of Arizona, after the election, so yeah, I'll briefly run through the article and obviously run through the election results, which everyone knows. But at the top, spoke about Gallego's win and his of all of the candidates covered in these races, he has the most articulated um, positions on broadband, and has endorsements to follow it. I think he has endorsements from several labor unions. The IBEW is one of them, and they cite his support and authorship of some broadband provisions in the BETA or in the IIJA and other programs as part of the reason why they support him. Um, Other areas where particularly the Democrats made a big part of all of their campaigns in Arizona, I think, was voicing support for tribal investment in broadband. All the candidates I covered, especially Gallego and Jonathan Nez, who was Eli Crane's challenger in the second district, made large appeals to thanking and praising the investments of the IIJA in tribal broadband and advocating for more. And I think that is a strong position where some other areas candidates have not made as clear declarations. In terms of the Republican Party, I think we saw this across many states, where especially in House races where candidates were jumping on some of the more high-profile members of the party, their messages attacking the BEAD and DE programs. Ted Cruz obviously making many of those attacks, and the FCC commissioner as well, making some of or not the commissioner, excuse me. The result, I think, of those attacks is yet to be seen. Drew Garner and Kevin Tagling have been covering Ted Cruz's letters to NTIA extensively, and are doing a lot of work on understanding what that's going to mean. But it seems, especially in Arizona, the House districts covered in this article, they were on board with those statements, and those members being Schweikert and Siscomani and Crane, all in various statements, whether it be on X or formal campaign releases, attacking the BEAD and DE investments. Schweikert actually probably had the most interesting criticism of the BEAD program, going as far to argue for satellite-based Wi-Fi mesh networks, which was a new proposal. He did this on the House floor in September, arguing that BEAD networks are over-subsidizing rural areas, and that satellite services like Starlink could be used to feed receivers and then move that signal through what we would typically think of as like a rural or an urban mesh network, to do the same in a rural area fed from low Earth orbit satellites. And obviously much in Representative Schweikert's opinion, that would be much cheaper than the BEAD program. Finally, in the second district, which I've hinted at, the upset of Jonathan Nez was avoided by Eli Crane. Second district, I think, was really interesting, and I'm glad that it was pointed out that it was a closer race than I had initially seen, because it's massive, the largest in Arizona, going all the way down south of Phoenix, all the way to the northernmost parts of the state, which are obviously most rural parts of the state. And I think there's a large, going back to the tribal investment piece, there's kind of a large discrepancy in the views of Representative Crane and Jonathan Nez. Nez making history as the first Native American congressional candidate to advance past the primaries for a House challenger. He made many statements and about his striving for improved infrastructure on tribal lands, where Eli Crane is far less inclined to make the same statements, far less inclined to advocate for infrastructure investments in rural areas and on tribal lands. like I said, the future of the BEAD program will largely depend on the choices that these newly elected members make, and if the administration, with what we're hearing, uh, is going to actually take steps to try and claw back or make any sort of changes, for states to change the ways that they're planning to implement funding. But in Arizona, in the House, it seems that those concerns, and positions are like they have won out in the close races, the toss-up races in the state, whereas Ruben Gallego is the main detractor in this article from those positions. And I would just if welcome any questions, or takeaways from this that people think I missed, misrepresented, things that need to be added. Like last time, I was really, really pleased with the input that I received.
Okay. Any comments or thoughts for Reed? Questions?
Reed, Mark Goldstein. I know we can't make predictions, rightly so, but what do you feel the sympathies might be towards some sort of ACP program coming back under the new Congress and administration?
Yeah, I can't. This would be a good place for I mentioned Drew Garner. He's done a lot more work than I have on ACP advocacy. Um, I'm not sure. I think a lot of the smart people that I've been listening to and talking to about ACP and what is going to happen to affordability in the next 4 years have been turning to the states. Uh, I think the advocacy community is looking towards the states because the federal landscape, at least at this moment, looks shakier in terms of what investment is going to be possible. So looking to state budgets to see if there's any room or will for new programs at more local levels, as opposed to a national level program.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Understand.
Ilana, I don't even.
Sure.
That's a Drew question. I hear the same things, and I know that the state conversation, obviously, there's a lot more. You you can there's a lot more freedom for steps to be taken there than there's the USF working group that I think everyone knows about in Congress that, says they're going to produce something in the next week and then, years go by. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But I think, yeah, you're right. It could happen. And that would be a way to, not require an entirely new program to be funded or legislated.
So I'll read a couple of things. So I had a note from Mala this morning. She's attending well, she's online attending the national conference, talking about what to expect with the new administration. And she sent me a note that Alan Davidson, TIA administrator, is going to be stepping down. So we know for sure. So we know he's going to be out. We know that the FCC chair is out, and there's a new FCC chair happening, and who knows what else to expect. Elena, you want to ask your question?
I have a lot of questions. Which one?
Go ahead.
You mean the one? Oh no, Drew. I mean, sorry, Reed.
No, you're good.
I have talked to Drew about the USF stuff, and Reed is right. I mean, the working group is barely a working group anymore. Like they're not really doing anything at this
Right.
moment.
Yeah.
So I don't foresee anything like that coming down the pipe.
Excuse me, Elena, can you explain what that working group is for people who may not know?
Well, Reed was just talking about it. There's a USF reform working group, Universal Service Fund, which is, it does need to be reformed. Right now, the funding for it is coming out of landline dollars, which, we all know is kind of stupid at this point, just to be, honest. So yeah, no, I mean, the question that I have in chat, Steve, Reed already answered. So we don't know. We don't know, and we can't predict what's going to happen. I do have a question though about like looking to the states for something
Mhm.
like an ACP like program. I find that to be probably extremely difficult for many states because like
Right.
California, for example, they don't have anything in their budget that says, whatever. Um, and probably neither does Arizona for that matter. So I find it really interesting that again we're in a situation where there's going to be, the have and the have-nots, right? Some states might be able to do a little something around it, but it's going to take a lot of work. And I don't know that I just don't see that happening. So I guess my question is how can states provide an ACP like benefit to their to their residents. I just don't see how that is even possible. It's a nice thing to do if
Right.
but so I
Yeah.
guess that's my question. Like do we really think that's going to happen?
I think it's, incredibly unlikely in most states, if not all states. And I think maybe it's just a way to try something new. People, if you get momentum in a state house that is a little bit more, willing to take some of those conversations up, maybe it generates a forum for advocacy. But I think you're right. And the only state, um, New York, I think, is the main um, state that has any sort of program for affordability outside of the BEAD affordability plans statewide um, affordability plan, which I think is uh, under legal scrutiny at the moment, correct? So I I think the solution ultimately has to lie at the federal level. I don't think that's a far reach to say,
Yeah.
and I hope that there's opportunity in the next Congress to make another push now that the program is lapsed completely. So, but yeah, and I that's fair criticism on um, the state suggestion because budgets are tight as it is, and they're going to become tighter likely. So, yeah, understood.
Well,
So a
Thanks,
good
Elena.
segue. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Elena.
no, I was going to say, Steve, Helen asked a question in the chat about digital equity and ACP falling under these requirements, and I think the answer is no. Was that correct?
I think
I
so as
believe
well.
so. So a good transition to Reed. Thank you so much. And there may be more questions, but a good transition. John Kelly, you still there?
Yes, sir.
So John, you want to talk about Arizona?
Do I want to talk about Arizona? Sure, I'd love to talk about Arizona. So, I
John, can you
appreciate.
introduce yourself? And
Sure, John
please.
Kelly. I'm principal with Tri-Advocates, the government relations consulting firm focused on Arizona. So I read very good analysis on your end. I appreciate both what you said and what you haven't said. That's a great way to present on this. Yeah, we're still figuring it out right now. I think the legislators are still figuring out what they want to do. Let's think for the first part about the fiscal situation facing the state. We do not have a huge budget deficit, nor do we have a huge budget surplus. So we're kind of what I've described in some presentations as meh on the budget, kind of not good, not bad, but not a lot of room for restoring things that a lot of people need. The universities got hurt pretty badly last session. The community colleges got hurt pretty badly last session. Adult ed got hurt pretty badly last session. There's a lot of need out there. And one of the biggest issues that the legislature is going to face in the first 4 to 6 weeks of the session is whether to refer to the ballot an extension of Prop 123, which was passed 10 years ago. And that would continue the use of the state land trust fund to provide additional funding for K-12 education. And so the question now is whether that will be just a simple extension that will be sent to the ballot probably in May, or are there going to be quote unquote enhancements to it? We can talk about what enhancements look like. So that's where the focus is. So I'll try to bridge back to what you're thinking about, which is, broadband, ACP, other kinds of things. I think infrastructure has been fairly popular on a bipartisan basis. There's concerns and complaints about how money hasn't come out from the program. There's concerns and complaints about DEI requirements in some of these federal programs that you're going to hear some complaints about. But I think if we keep our heads down and focus on, delivering infrastructure capability to the rural areas, we're well positioned with key legislators in key areas to be supportive of that. I don't see a lot of expansive things like state level ACP. I think there's some philosophical discussions about whether affordable broadband should replace the need for ACP in time. But I do think we still have to continue this process of education, since about 17 of the legislators of the 90 coming in are brand new, have never held office in the legislature before. Another 9 were appointed within the last 12 months, and others have been only there for 1 term, and this is a brand new situation. But I would remind everybody that we're about 695 days away from the next election, and so the election is already relevant.
Okay. Thanks, John. Any questions for John? Okay, any questions for Reed or John before we move on?
Hey, this is Alexis Sustorf. I actually have a question for Reed. When I do a lot of state level work similar to John, but on the federal side, it's interesting to hear some of the dynamic that you shared and wrote on, specifically some of the more conservative voices on this issue. It is equally interesting in getting to my question. We certainly didn't do any assistance with BEAD as an acronym, right? Some of those words can be really triggering to Republicans.
Right.
So, just that in a basic sense is, I think, why it's heightened equities, right? The evil word of equity, even though, not as evil as some would think. I want my children to understand the value of equity. But so getting to my question, is there any in your conversations, like BEAD is workforce, BEAD is, connecting individuals in workforce situations, BEAD is education and connecting students to education opportunities. And these are all Republican dialect, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are concerned about the educational gaps. This is a way to address this. They're concerned about America not having workforce. This is a way to address it. So just sort of in your research and conversations, is there any way to pivot to that? Or do you think we're just so deep in BEAD is bad that that's not even possible?
Yeah. And I appreciate your question and that observation. I think it's hard now because those who are, seeking to attack the program have done such, kind of a good job at pushing this message that we've allocated $42.5 billion and none of it has been spent. Obviously, on its face, that, to many of us here, it's obvious to us that that's a nonsense argument. because it was never supposed to be spent in 3 years. It was always going to be a decade-long investment. But I think that for whatever reason, that message really took hold, and that when I in that I'm sure at least two or three of the places where I cite the Arizona Republican Congress members attacking the program, it's quote tweeting I think it's from I think it's a Cruz tweet, but it could be another high-ranking Republican, talking about how 3 years on and not a dollar has been spent, or billions of dollars have been spent, but not a shovel has broken ground. So I think everything we can do to shift the narrative away from that, and talk about how it was never going to be done now. That's just sort of not how any of this works. And you can ask any expert at any big ISP that's just not how, even if they were given free reign, which they wouldn't build in these rural areas anyways if they had free reign. It would take longer than 3 years if they were able to start digging on day one. But I think you're right, shifting towards things like access to telehealth in rural areas, access to e-commerce in rural areas, improved workforce training for, recently retired veterans who want to re-enter the workforce. Those are all winning messages. From where I sit, we just did a report with the Veterans Affairs, their telehealth office, going through all of the state digital equity plans and how the state digital equity plans are treating veterans as a covered population in each state, and kind of the broad strategies that have come out from those. And that, focused on the things that you mentioned, is giving access in rural areas, providing workforce solutions, telehealth, and providing solutions to, not just what we typically think of as, blue populations, the urban population centers, but also rural residents and, folks that are typically viewed as, Republican segments of the population. So I think you're right. It's just important that we don't get bogged down by those attacks and say, hey, this is, every dollar that BEAD is spending is a dollar that wouldn't have been spent by private investment. And that's why this program exists.
Any other questions or comments? Questions for Reed or John, for that matter? So I want to just comment about a couple of things, and this is my opinion more than anything. But I think that, particularly in today's environment, that I think we have to be looking at not expecting government to fund digital equity programs, except in local government. And I think we need to be looking at, we've got, a few examples, Pima County and others here who have stepped up to address some of the digital equity issues. But I do think we're going to have to be looking at different options and not expecting the federal government at this stage of the game to provide a lot of funding. So I do think, and I've said this many times, that we need to look at other sources of funds and create a mechanism in this state to be able to really recruit foundations, corporate funding, and so forth to support digital equity. If no other reason, that the digital equity money we're going to get is really very limited, and we need to have sustainability after that money's gone, and it's still only going to address a limited number, limited resource ability to address that issue in the state. So I do think that we need to have some other solution to addressing not expecting the federal government to address that. So I'm sorry, Elena, what are you saying?
Well, I'm just, from our work as a nonprofit, I can tell you that nonprofits are spread pretty thin, and have been since COVID when they were shifting all of their funding to rapid response. They've not recovered in a lot of areas, and in other areas, they've just shifted what they're funding. And so I can tell you just from the foundations that I deal with, it's going to be a hard sell because they will fund programs. And so if there's a specific program that a specific like nonprofit is suggesting or wanting to do, they might fund that. But it's really hard to paint that broad brush and say, let's go to foundations and ask them for money for this, because I mean, it has to be very specific. Like it can't just be quote unquote digital equity or digital inclusion. It's got to be, they want a specific program to fund, and they want, so it's just, I'm just saying, Steve, I don't know so much about the corporate foundations, but yeah, the Intels of the world and all of that, they all have corporate foundations, and we could go to them for money because it makes sense, right? Like people can't use their product if they're not connected. People can't use their products if they're not, computer literate and all of that. So I think that that's a strategy that really has to be thought through, before we say, well, let's just go to foundations and have them fund digital equity. I don't really think they work that way. So,
Well, I would agree, Elena, that we can't just say, well, just give us money for digital equity, that we would need to have a clear strategy, just like we theoretically have a digital equity plan for the state right now, that we will need to have some kind of a plan specifically outlining what it is that money would be used for. So I think we've got, in my opinion, that I think we've got to find some other solution, and we've got to figure it out. Otherwise, I think that particularly the smaller organizations, are really going to struggle trying to address the digital equity issue. Anyway, what else? Any other comments before we move on? Going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you, Reed. Great. Appreciate you being here. Enjoyed your stay in the UK with your significant other. And we'll hopefully see you when you're available.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you all very much.
You bet. So let's move on to our next update, and welcome EJ John. Most of you know that he was with the American Policy Institute, American Indian Policy Institute at ASU. I hope I got that right, EJ. And he has now moved on to the governor's office. So I'm going to just turn it over to EJ. He's new on the job, he'll tell you that, but he's going to give us a quickie about what his job's going to be. So with that, EJ, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and really appreciate the presentation and the conversation. Really interesting and really informative. But yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is EJ John. A lot of you might have seen me on other meetings and stuff over the last year or so. Used to work at the Indian Policy Institute, American Indian Policy Institute over at ASU, working on tribal broadband. But I moved here to the governor's office on tribal relations, and I'm still working on tribal broadband. But looking at it from kind of a more holistic view of not only the infrastructure, but also how connecting tribal communities contributes to economic development, community development, looking at how that affects workforce and education and healthcare and things like that, to try and help tribes reach their overall goals of getting more connected to benefit their communities. So to that end, I'm here to help with the broadband office, assist the state broadband office in their efforts to implement the different programs. like BEAD and digital equity, and also here to work with some of the tribes that have already reached out to the governor's office about their projects and their initiatives. And yeah, just kind of covering all things tribal broadband and infrastructure and workforce. So a little broader of a view than what I did at AIPI, but still very much focused on broadband and digital equity. So I don't have a presentation or any slides or anything. I kind of just wanted to reintroduce myself and let you all know about my new role here. And just want to let you all know that I'm here to help you all out, or you can reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. Um, I think Steve put my contact on the meeting agenda for today, so you can go ahead and reach me there. But yeah, I'm just here to continue working on connecting tribal communities.
So EJ, what's your perspective on how the tribes are trying to work with and implement BEAD?
So for tribes, a lot of that is going to depend on kind of the details of how these service areas kind of pan out. I think pretty much the idea from the state broadband office is going to be that tribes are going to be their own project areas. So under that, tribes will be able to figure out how they want to approach their project areas, whether they want to implement something through their own tribal entity, maybe their own tribal ISP, or work with the outside company to get that done. Um, right now, it's just a lot of, educating and communicating with tribal communities about how they want to approach that exactly. So, trying to get all that work done before all the deadlines coming up too is going to be important. So, I think tribes that are kind of already involved in building networks and who are already working with pots of money that are out there are kind of proactive. So we just want to make sure that all the tribes who are able to participate in these programs, are given as much leeway, as much notice, and as much help that we can give them from our office to make sure that they participate.
Okay. Any questions or comments for EJ? Going once, going twice. Well, EJ, we always appreciate your participation. You are certainly pretty regular in attending our meetings, and hopefully that will be the case again. One thing, EJ, and it's not related specifically to the Indian community, but the governor has created a workforce council. And I was trying to find out who is leading that and how we can get that person to come meet with us. I don't know if that's something you can help with or not.
I haven't talked with anybody about the Workforce Council yet, but I'm sure that I will probably connect with them in the next couple of days or so. So yeah, once I get some more information on that, I can definitely give you an update.
That'd be great.
Hey, Steve, this is John.
Yeah, John.
The Workforce Council has been around for a long time. There's a well-established website with a point of contact, but the innovation under the Governor Hubbs is she's created this workforce cabinet, and they've had their
John,
first
actually,
meeting.
that's what I was referring to. Sorry.
They've had their first meeting, and Ian O'Grady in the governor's office has presented to groups on what it is, where it's going, and to give updates. So if you want to, I think Ian might be the best contact for you.
Do you have that contact, John?
I do.
Let's talk offline. If you can maybe help facilitate that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Okay, so I think we're at a point now of are there any questions, comments, or other announcements that people have about things coming up? Of course, the holidays are approaching, but any other comments, thoughts at this point? Announcements, events? Don't everybody speak at once.
Steve, Mark Goldstein.
Yeah, Mark.
One or two things. So last night I did give my mega satellite deep dive to Jerry Crow's IEEE group. We had about 36 people online for that. Quite a few from industry and university, researchers and others. Was impressed by the attendance. So that deck is available as a PDF to download almost 200 slides. So it's fairly well organized around launch capabilities or broadband or Earth observation or cybersecurity and space and so on. So the link is in the chat along with a brief description. I know you'll probably embed that in the next newsletter. Also, ATIC did hold what I would deem a successful broadband provider working group meeting at Kirk Bush's Big Data Southwest AI and Data Center conference last week. We had about a dozen people in the room and about another 8 or 10 online. Good interaction from Susan Bittersmith, Doc Weninger, Heather Floyd, Rory Conaway. So a good core of some broadband providers representing different industry segments. I do have a recording of that I'll see about putting up somewhere for post-event access.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Mark, do you want to hit any highlights? I know there's a lot of stuff, and I know you get into a lot of detail, but do you want to hit any highlights about your presentation yesterday? I don't know why I had it in my brain that your presentation was tomorrow instead of yesterday, so I missed that. I apologize.
Sure. I mean, the big transformation in launch capability in the old days, one satellite would go up on one rocket, and there were years there were, you know, only handfuls of rocket launches 10, 12, 14 years ago. And so satellite deployment was really limited by launch capabilities. Now, with reusable booster stages and other elements, and just an explosion on the commercial side, and the ability for these larger rockets like SpaceX's Falcon 9 and now coming online, their Falcon Heavy, you can send up 60 satellites at once, even a mix of different kinds of satellites. You can send up 20 Starlink and 20 small sats and this and that. So what we're seeing now is close to 10,000 active satellites as of the end of last year, probably 12 or 13,000 the end of this year. Predominantly, they're going into LEO, low Earth orbit constellations, Starlink at this point, but Project Kuiper, Amazon's programs coming online, and there's OneWeb. So there's three big players and several other wannabes in the broadband LEO space. But also the parallel trend now is that these LEO satellites are being equipped with vast arrays of small planar antennas, little round disc antennas on large arrays that can beam mobile to mobile phones on the planet. We've talked about that in this meeting before. It's more commonly called direct to device, direct to cellular, direct to mobile. And there are several plays. There is Starlink that has their T-Mobile partnership and is being authorized for text to be followed by voice and data. There's AST Mobile that is partnered with Verizon and AT&T in the U.S., Vodafone. Internationally, there's an Apple Play with a company called Global Star. So there's 4 or 5 efforts at cellular global cell phone coverage, which will have very limited bandwidth for the data side, but give full text, voice, and limited data across the planet. So those are a couple highlights: the broadband constellations and the direct to disk capabilities coming online.
Great. Actually, those are pretty important things. So thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. And I'm sorry, did you say that presentation is going to be available somewhere?
It's already available. The link is in the chat. It's on SlideShare. You can download the PDF there with free registration of their site.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mark. Any other announcements? Brian, do you want to make any comments about what Mark was just talking about?
No, I think he pretty well covered it. There's a lot of work going on in the standards, what's broadly known as non-terrestrial networks, and that's for supporting um, direct to device, and that's definitely the future that we're going to see. 6G has ubiquitous connectivity as part of one of its use cases. So integration and interoperability between non-terrestrial networks and terrestrial networks is going to be inherent as far as 6G. I think you covered it right. As far as our company, we've announced we're working with AST. We've already demonstrated direct-to-device capabilities, and the good news on that is it's your regular handset that you have today. It's no special handset needed, no special, antennas or anything needed. It's direct to the device you have today. So we'll look forward to that over the next several years as that matures.
And apologies, Brian was a fifth provider, AT&T, that did speak at the Broadband Provider Working Group. Sorry, you were
Oh,
there
no problem.
remotely,
No problem.
and do appreciate that, Brian. Thank you.
Sure.
And Brian is with AT&T, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have anything else that they want to? John Haas, didn't you just have a
I was just going
cybersecurity?
to say that, Steve. I was there. So I was going to ask John if he wanted to talk about the CISA DHS conference yesterday.
Yep. John? John, are you there? John, are you there? Well, he's there, but not there. Anthony, do you have anything that you want to update us on with the state library?
Do you want to hear about the conference?
Sure.
Yeah, sorry. I was struggling to find the audio button. John
Okay.
Haas here. Yeah, we did have a great meeting. Um, People flew out from the federal DHS and CISA, and then we had the Arizona group there. So we had about 50 folks representing a lot of different places. Mojave was there, local towns, but some people from further away. A lot of good information, and they will be sending out documents. So if anyone is interested, oh, hey, and somebody even got a list of the people already. Good
That was
job.
me, John.
Oh, thanks. Um, so these were some of the folks, and we have the information about their backgrounds, of the folks that spoke. So it was, I think, well done, and we enjoyed it. We'll be doing another, and we'll do another tabletop exercise in the spring to follow up from what we did in November. Because people are, I think, hungry for knowing what are the resources and how do we use them and who do we communicate with. So great networking events, and thanks, Ilana, for sharing all that information.
So, Elena, do you want to share anything more about what excuse me, John, do you want to just tell people who you are and where you are? And
Oh, sure. So I wear a few hats, but I was the host from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, the College of Business Security and Intelligence, and then started the Cyber Intelligence and Security program now 12 years ago, if you can believe it.
Great. Thanks, John.
The
Elena,
only
do you
one
want
in
to
the
add
country,
anything
John,
more?
right?
That's
John?
right. The
Only one.
first and only.
Um, yeah, so Steve, so there's also another conference tomorrow, the State of Cyber Security for Arizona, which I can also talk to, but it was yesterday's session that John mentioned was super interesting. Obviously, being with Common Sense, I was there, to listen to folks talking about personal cybersecurity or cyber hygiene. I mean, there's lots of ways to look at it, but the one I think the one message that was clear with all of those speakers that I put in the chat was that it's really a matter of human excuse me, it's the human element that is operating and controlling everything that we talk about when we talk about cybersecurity. So the idea of making sure that humans, that individuals know how to protect themselves, how to protect the data of their customers, their networks, et cetera. But teaching the individual is really what I saw as sort of a theme that went through the whole day, including hearing from the folks who run a program that's called Know to Protect, which is a federal program that DHS runs. I was very interested in it because the program really underscores the critical role that individual awareness and preparedness play in enhancing, a community's security against cyber threats, which ultimately contribute to a safer digital environment. And so I just thought that was a super interesting session. And then the other session that I was really interested in was the cyber hygiene session that Kelly Hills did. And she talked just a little bit about, the idea that, this is not just individual hackers playing around anymore. I mean, there are very organized enterprises that have been created to steal information, to gather data, to get into your network. And then she talked a little bit about some examples with some ransomware groups, being an international crime syndicate that they are aware of, and they use ransomware and data theft for, to profit off of. So it was just really interesting. And like I said, there's another event. I don't know if it's still open to people, but tomorrow, the state of Arizona, and I'm looking to see if I have a link or something that I could share with everybody. But they are putting on a state of cyber. So if I can find my information on that, I will. Oh wait, here it is. So it's the 2024 State of Arizona Cyber Summit. It's tomorrow from like 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's at the Hyatt Regency downtown. But I'm not sure. I think registration might be closed, but I can.
Oh, and I saw a note about that today, that registration is closed, but
Okay.
if somebody wants to attend, I think they can contact Ryan Murray about
Oh,
attending.
here I have a link. It's for Nagan. So I'll put that in the chat if anybody still wants to go, and then I can also put in the chat an agenda if anybody's interested. But it looks like it's going to be a full day.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'll put all that in the chat, but that's. Oh, thanks, John. Yeah, the Know to Protect for Homeland Security was super interesting.
Okay. Any other announcements? So two things. Paul, I owe you an apology. We were talking about having you talk today and saw your note that you could do that next week. So let's definitely plan on that, and let's talk right afterwards so I can get that nailed down and be done. And then John, maybe there's something, we talk a lot about that, and we assume that everybody who on this call knows everything they should be doing about cybersecurity. And so maybe there's some highlights of that conference that you might want to share with this group next week.
Can, because the semester's over and I'll have my grades in on Sunday.
So is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll talk with you also, and so we'll plan on you two guys, Paul and John, to do a little presentation tomorrow. I am going to
Next
try and
Thursday.
reach out to Ruben Gallego's office and see if we can get them to come to our meetings. As you know, we've had great support from Mark Kelly's office, but we need to hear from some of the other folks also. So with that, any other announcements? Going once? Going twice? Okay, I'm going to stop recording.